Okay, so last time you guys put all of your spacers on the back of your pieces and you glued the base of your design onto the mask form. I just want to point out when you take the tape off, because the tape is not a permanent part of this sculpture, when you take the tape off, it's important to kind of pull the tape off away from the paper so that if it catches on the paper, it'll only tear a little bit out toward the edge. So you can take off all of this tape that you had holding down your base onto the mask form. You could take that off all the way around so that you just have the mask form. Okay, so once the tape is off, this is securely attached. The base is securely attached to the mask form. Now it's time for us to start constructing. So it's always a good idea to have your template out again to make sure that you are gluing things in the right order. Okay, so my first piece that I'm gluing down is this crown piece. And like I said, now that we're kind of arced with the distance, now that we're over the mask form, these pieces are not going to lie flat and flush with each other anymore. They're going to stretch out a little bit. So when you look at this, do you see how they don't align with the edges anymore? There's a little bit of offset, which is fine because it'll add to our depth. The key is, though, that I do want my center pieces to be lined up. So when I go to glue these pieces, I want to make sure that I'm lining my center piece up and the other pieces will kind of shift. Like I said, they will be offset a little bit. So I'm going to line that center piece up, and then as my pieces go to one side or the other, they will shift again. So a little bit of glue, remember. A little bit of glue, and this will just take a second. This is where patience really comes into play here. I'm going to, the spacer that goes in the center, I'm going to make sure that that one gets lined up in the center. I'm going to hold it down for a second, apply a little bit of pressure. Then I'm going to hold this one down on the left side. And on the right side, apply some pressure. So I might just have to kind of hold these for a second just to make sure that they adhere. So I have just a little bit of lift here, just that one layer of spacers in between, and you want to make sure that you take the time to make sure that these are set up. You don't want to move on to the next piece until you're sure that these are set. And by set, I mean they're not going to spring back up on you. They're going to stay in place. We want to avoid putting tape on everything, so just be patient and give this a second and make sure that they will stay long enough. My face piece is next. This is raised up one level, so my face piece, remember I had used the double spacers. So again, I'm going to apply some glue onto the backs of the spacers. Okay, and then even though there's some tension, it's not, super hard tension, super shifting tension. Want to try to get this lined up in the middle again. It's going to be offset. I'm just trying to see if the offset is about the same on both sides without blocking my view too much. So I can shift over a little bit more. I'm lining up the bottom edges. So I'm going to go ahead and push down a little bit on those two center pieces. And then got a spacer right here and a spacer right there. Putting a little bit of pressure on those to make sure they start to adhere. So you'll see how it's kind of offset, trying to make it as symmetrical as possible. So take your time again. And, you know, what's nice about this is because of the spacers, the edges are not all sealed down. The edges are gonna give you that, kind of cast shadow effect. So our spacers are really the only places where things are secured down. Honestly, I could have moved my spacers a little further out, but I think they're fine. All right, so my next one that I'm gonna do is this piece. This is my um, face center. I also have this band that goes around. Okay, so depending on how I want to line this up, it might be better maybe instead of doing this. So, you know, you guys test things out a little bit and see like, oh, would it be better if I put this piece on first? Because that aligns with some other pieces in the lower layers. If I put this piece on first and then I put this center face piece. So try some things out as you construct. Take your time. Okay. It might take you more than this class period to finish this up because I want you to be careful and align things. Don't be afraid to totally take something off. The glue will dry clear. So if you do have to take something off and reposition it, you know, try to do that before the glue sets up too much. But even if it does, you know, tear a little bit, you're probably going to put something right back down over an area where it will overlap and not show. So take your time, take these layers slowly, but work from the bottom layer up because every time you put on another layer, you've got that curvature to compensate for. So each of these layers, as they get glued on, is going to curve. And the key is to try to keep your center aligned as much as possible. And then just let each of the layers adjust a little bit for that curvature. Okay, so you're going to continue with this and within the hour that you have asynchronous, see if you can, how much you can get finished. I would rather you take your time and do a neat job and let things dry than rush through it and have trouble.